It's an important and popular fact that a lot of people were captivated by The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. It was a boldly redesigned entry in Nintendo's long-running fantasy series, and by making it a launch title, Nintendo gifted Switch owners with a big and beefy adventure to break in their new consoles with style. Over the years, a lot of developers have attempted to replicate the success of The Legend of Zelda, and yes, it's easy to label these games as Zelda clones, but until Nintendo actually licenses out its franchises to Sony and Microsoft, these kinds of games are the only way for those without a Nintendo machine to experience the innate magic of the Zelda world. I say this because Ubisoft's Immortals Fenyx Rising is a clear homage to Breath of the Wild that stops just short of outright theft. As a hero called upon to save the world, you'll form alliances with 4 guardians and use their collective strength to defeat a powerful villain. Breath of the Wild set itself in the land of Hyrule, a world whose time and place always seems to change with each new game. Immortals, on the other hand, takes place in a storybook version of Greek mythology. As I see it, using ancient Greece as a backdrop serves 2 purposes. 1, a reminder that Greek mythology is absolutely awesome. And 2, Ubisoft Quebec had an entire game's worth of leftover research material from Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and they had to do something with it. Ancient Greece, as it is depicted in Immortals, is painted with a more fantastical brush than Odyssey, depicted with a romanticism that often runs counterpoint to the commentary delivered by Zeus and Prometheus, the game's chief overseers, who might as well be Olympian stand-ins for Good Omens, Aziraphale, and Crowley. So Zeus has a teeny tiny problem. Typhon, the son of Gaia and Tartarus, has broken free from his prison and waged a one-titan war of vengeance against Zeus and his pantheon. After turning all mortals into stone, Typhon directed his rage towards Athena, Hephaestus, Aphrodite, and Ares, stripping them of their godly essence and transforming them into objects of cruel irony. Left with little to push back against Typhon's assault, Zeus turns to Prometheus, the titan responsible for stealing fire from the gods, to find him a hero who can help save the day. That hero is Fenyx, a warrior washed ashore after the Titans' rampage. Eager to help the gods, Fenyx's adventure is also a personal one, because their brother was one of thousands of mortals turned to stone. Fenyx's adventure plays out across the 6 major territories that make up the Golden Isle, a massive island that sits in the shadow of Mount Olympus. You'll have the choice to play Fenyx as a man or a woman, a decision that is mostly cosmetic and doesn't have much bearing on how the game unfolds. I chose to play as a woman, if nothing else than to make a cartoon character that walks and talks like Cassandra, one of the best Assassin's Creed protagonists. And like Assassin's Creed, Fenyx's once-in-a-lifetime adventure affords her the rare opportunity to mingle with Greek gods as she attempts to restore them to power. Typhon's attack has changed the god in ways to make them absolutely useless as he consolidates power. Aphrodite, for example, was transformed into an elegant apple tree, but the essence of her being, her vain, selfish personality, were bottled up and sealed away. Only through a series of quests and deep dives into Tartarus itself will you restore these figures to their rightful form. This all comes as an absolute thrill to Fenyx, who stands Zeus and his buddies with enough fervor to make her the Kamala Khan of Greek mythology. Similarities between Immortals and Breath of the Wild are easy to point out, but Ubisoft has done enough to ensure that their game stands on its own 2 feet. Gifted with weapons and gear imbued with the power of the divines, Fenyx has the means to deal with the Isle's native fauna and the minions at Typhon's command, which include the twisted shades of heroes like Achilles and Odysseus. The game operates on a system of primary and secondary quests given by the gods in need of help. This does limit interaction to a small cast of characters, and with the Golden Isle as big as it is, adventuring can get pretty lonely and isolating. Filling the void is the narration and color commentary from Zeus and Prometheus, who have something to say about what Fenyx is doing at any given time. Some of these exchanges are goofy riffs that paint Zeus as a selfish dude bro who is completely ignorant of the effect his behavior has on both mortals and gods. Some of Prometheus's longer treatises on the origins and lifestyles of different gods are scholarly enough to create tension with the cartoonish exuberance of the game's presentation and sense of humor. I'm not complaining, and furthermore, this dissonance affords Prometheus the time to correct popular misconceptions of the more watered-down interpretations of Greek myths as favored by Zeus. One exchange that sticks in my mind is the creation of Aphrodite, with whom Prometheus quietly explains the literal interpretation of her birth, the same way a nervous father attempts to answer their child's question of where babies come from. The quests given unto you by the gods involve exploring their territories to track down where Typhon has hidden their essences. Standing in the way of this task are a lot of angry animals, mythical creatures, and Typhon's undead army. Combat feels mostly comparable to the recent Assassin's Creed Valhalla, though it's much faster and less methodical. Fenyx uses light and heavy attacks to whittle down the health of her foes, and by dodging at the last possible second before an enemy strikes, time will briefly slow down to give you a window of opportunity for further attacks. To draw an even tighter connection between the two games, all enemies, from the lowly boar to the hulking Cyclops, have a separate gauge that triggers a stun state, leaving them defenseless for a short while. Whatever creature crosses her path, no challenge is too big for Fenyx's spirit. In reality, I struggled with the early game because the character is fairly weak against her foes. I often felt helpless as I struggled to study attack tells, perfect the timing of parrying and dodging, and scrounging for health items that never seemed to be around when I needed them the most. By the end of the story, though, I was blessed with a healthy supply of restorative items and more than capable of handling whatever Typhon threw at me. Keeping Fenyx further humbled is a stamina pool that drains whenever she performs basic traversal actions like swimming, breathing underwater, dodging, climbing, gliding, and fighting. There are consumables you can chow down on to restore stamina, but if you're caught climbing or flying or whatever and run empty, you risk taking fall damage or drowning. Making Fenyx strong enough to face off against the most battle-hardened Titan is nearly a feat worthy of Hercules. Situated in the Hall of the Gods are various monuments to ancient Greece's omnipresent deities that offer upgrades in exchange for specific items. Zeus's lightning bolts increase Fenyx's stamina, adamantium ore can upgrade gear at Hephaestus' forge, coins of Charon can buy skill and combat upgrades, ambrosia adds more health to Fenyx's life bar, and the cauldron of Circe lets you brew potions from raw ingredients. You can actually find these cauldrons spread out all over the map, which is great because you're likely to spend quite a bit of time and effort hunting down restoratives. Eating raw pomegranates and blue mushrooms partially restores health and stamina respectively, but mixing them into potions makes them far more potent. The cauldron has its own skill tree, and by investing amber into each potion type, which includes brews that add to attack and defense, they'll yield additional benefits. It'd be nice if the rest of the upgrade tools could be spread out across the map for no other reason than to cut back on how often you have to backtrack. I really like the game's philosophy of upgrading equipment because it eschews typical conventions. Instead of spending resources to level up each weapon individually, the stat increase affects all gear within a category. In other words, if you own 3 different swords, all of them will receive the stat boost. I like this because it gives me the freedom to switch between different weapons without worrying about them being underpowered. Although all weapons benefit from upgrades, each of them come with unique perks that become more powerful over time. For example, you might find a sword that has a small chance to do double damage to foes in the air, and with each upgrade, the chance percentage and damage output increases. They don't do anything outside of giving you the means to make Fenyx look as awesome as possible. The Golden Isle is the quintessential Ubisoft open world. Located in the heart of each territory are massive statues to the gods that operate an awful lot like the radio towers of old. They're not quite the same traversal puzzles like early Far Cry and Assassin's Creed games, but trying to scale these behemoths without falling because you ran out of stamina is a challenge in itself. From this high-up perch, the fog that covers the area in the in-game map is lifted, exposing a few points of interest. Fenyx can identify additional noteworthy areas by tagging them via Farsight, the "it's totally not eagle vision" mechanic that gives you a bird's eye view of the surrounding area. The Golden Isle is a collector's paradise, and you'll find a good number of puzzles that stand in between you and a shiny new weapon or armor. Immortals Fenyx Rising has a bit of a puzzle fetish, and I'm 100% on board with it. Scattered throughout each territory are sliding puzzles, physics puzzles, wind puzzles, variations on Sokoban, environmental puzzles that involve forming marbles into star constellations, the chance to be Odysseus and guide arrows through axe handles laid out in an elaborate path, and weighted pressure pads as far as the eye can see. These puzzles are the bright spots in what is a mostly so-so open world. Though pretty, when you're not engaged in combat or completing these puzzles, the map functions as a place to farm enough resources to pay for upgrades, which I thought to be a little tedious. Typhon occasionally mixes things up by sending wraiths to fight you from time to time, which is something you can stop by seeking out the source of the wraiths in each territory and defeating their true forms. The areas of the game I was most engaged with were the Vaults of Tartarus. Very much like the challenge rooms in Breath of the Wild, these self-contained areas are accessible from glowing red portals and offer unique challenges and difficulty. Filled with all sorts of clever traps, puzzle mechanics, and the occasional boss fight, the vaults are absolutely worth exploring for their puzzle designs alone, and they are the only place in the game to acquire the lightning bolts needed to upgrade your stamina. They present solid challenges for Fenyx's core abilities and really provide a good mental exercise. Some puzzles can be annoying given the fragility of certain interactive objects, and I admit losing my patience a few times because a wooden crate I needed for a pressure pad was destroyed, and I had to make the long trek back to get a new one. But for the most part, the Vaults of Tartarus have been an absolute delight. Although Zeus's lightning is the ultimate prize, some vaults contain a few hidden treasure chests. Should you complete a vault without nabbing these items, you're free to hop back in anytime before reaching the story's point of no return. The world of Immortals Fenyx Rising features plenty of things to keep you occupied as you rescue the gods and goddesses of Mount Olympus. It's not an especially deep game, and after the first hour, you'll have a pretty good idea of what to expect from the rest of the adventure. Breath of the Wild was fascinating because it left the player to figure things out on their own through experimentation and discovery. Immortals, on the other hand, can't wait to show you everything it has to offer, and will take the time to do so. And just when I started to feel weary and slipping into disinterest, I stumbled onto a really fun Vault of Tartarus that served as a reminder that it's the game's inventive puzzles, not the boss fights, the witty commentary between Zeus and Prometheus, or the moving confessions of the gods themselves that make Immortals Fenyx Rising a surprisingly delightful epic. DarkStation gives Immortals Fenyx Rising for the PlayStation 5 4 stars.